It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
Hulkamaniacs to Little Warriors. It's the ultimate challenge. It's WrestleMania VI right here on the Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney. How you doing today?
I am doing great. Nice to see you, Steve. And we're going to be talking about a WrestleMania today that remains one of my favorites for a number of reasons, though, as usual, because there's so many backstage stories, and we really do have a lot of them. So thank you. Thank you for having me dig back into that deep chest that I have in my memory. So it's going to be fun.
Well, anytime anyone sees these episodes pop up, they always go, God damn, look at Mooney. He looks amazing. And so 1990 Mooney, you had a little bit of a mullet. If you go back and watch the interviews you did with Dusty and Demolition, you got a little mullet there. What's going on?
It wasn't just a little mullet. Well, it was kind of the thing to do back then, but I did have it going on, partying back, business up front. And I was getting it done on both ends back then. So,
well, you looked great. You looked great when you popped up and I was watching it, and I'm like, wow, he looks amazing. I almost took a picture. I was like, no, we're gonna wait for this. We're gonna talk about it the next day. And it's funny because WrestleMania VI, everyone brings it up as in whose camp were you in? Were you a Hulkamaniac? Were you a Little Warrior? And my main question for you before we really get into all of this. Was Ultimate Warrior ready for the pressure to be the face of the WWF after WrestleMania VI?
Well, I really wanted to get into that today because, as we have discussed many times about the Warrior, and people have, it just rages on, this debate of who was he, what was he all about, and I found an old interview with him. That was done years later after he had left the WWF. And I just found it fascinating. It's one of the best I've ever seen of him because I kind of had a revelation about him after all of these years. And I think really what it comes down to, I don't think people could really handle back then somebody that was just completely honest for whatever his way of thinking, good or bad, but that guy just told it the way it was in his mind and the life that he was living. And of course, everybody, when they get a chance to sit these guys down, they want to say, what were you thinking during the match? What was was the pressure on? Did you notice the crowd and everything? And he basically says, please, I'm so tired of these questions, in a sense that people think that you come back to a memory and do this to anybody about a big event in their life. And of course, everybody says, oh yeah, it's all fresh. I remember. No, you don't. And I think back too of all the events that I was involved in. And when you're doing it, you're just doing it. You're not taking it in. And maybe later you can kind of reflect on it. But I think at the time, Jim Hellwig was just one of those people. And I think you're seeing more of it today. Like this whole thing about being genuine. He was genuine. There's, whatever, good or bad, whether you loved him or hated him or whatever, Jim just said it. And I don't think people were ready for that. So you say, was he ready for this challenge? I think that Jim always looked at it that, yeah, absolutely you feel the pressure, but I think he felt that every time he ran out down that runway to the ring. And so, sure, this was on a different stage. And he talks about the match, and I figured we get into this a little bit later, but now we're talking about it, that he says, sure, I remember the moment. I know it was this big thing, but to me, it was just me doing my job. And he said in particular, though, he goes, I do remember that it was magic that day, that everything with Hulk worked, everything that I did worked. And it was just, a special time. But as far as people thinking that, he's going to dig deep into those wonderful memories and say, oh, I just remember being on the canvas and looking out over into the arena and people, and me capturing and seeing their faces. You're not going to get that from somebody like him. So was he ready? Yeah, because he was in for the ride. And bottom line to him, he was doing a job. He wanted to be successful. He wanted to, make money was one of the biggest reasons he was doing what he was doing. And he was along the same lines, certainly way different personalities. But like Sid looked at it in the same way, that they weren't passionate about the business. It wasn't their life. They didn't live it. They didn't just love every bit of it. As we know, there are many that did. But those two weren't one of them, and Jim Hellwig was certainly not one of them. I'm not saying he didn't like what he was doing. I'm just saying he wasn't that guy. He wasn't in it because of I love this. That wasn't him.
I'm glad you said that, because over the years we have done podcasts so far, probably like 30 something of them, where people are always critical of our comments on Ultimate Warrior. But here it seems like we've changed our tone a little bit with Warrior, because there is a lot of pressure on someone who's going to work every day. And again, it's a job. I like podcasting. I like interviewing wrestlers. But guess what? When I'm up at 3 a.m. editing, sometimes you're like, well, this is not fun. This isn't turning into fun. But I'm also creating. I'm also having a good time. Ultimate Warrior is there for a paycheck, but he's also there to create memories that will gain him more money, which will gain him more notoriety and more celebrity status. So him here, WrestleMania 6, the pressure is on, especially because the whole tagline is, it's called the Ultimate Challenge. Can Hulk Hogan defeat Ultimate Warrior? That's what the people are buying, and people were buying it because WrestleMania 6, two good guys fighting each other in the main event. This is unheard of. Everyone thinks now it's such a normal thing to happen. This is uncharted territories. Like, what were the thoughts going into this as someone who worked in the company? Were you thinking, is this a good idea? Like, fans are going to be swayed. They're not going to be booing or cheering. They're going to be cheering both men. It's going to be hard to decipher who do you want to win.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you said at the top of this, of saying, were you a Hulkamaniac or were you a warrior? Were you a little warrior? And, in all of wrestling, you've got to have, some split, however it is, to create this friction in the ring. And this was a classic example of it. Now, you say, was I thinking like, oh, man, two baby faces, how are you going to get? But no, I didn't, because I've seen and talked to people where you didn't have people that were fans of both. You really did like one or the other. So that wasn't tough to, figure out that you're going to have sides in this. And that's pretty much what you need to create that confrontation. So that wasn't a question at all. But was it, as you said, today you're kind of used to seeing this stuff. Back then, no, it was always those lines. It was, good guy, bad guy. Yeah. And even though we started to blur the line about what exactly was a bad guy and how could he be over, that, wasn't the case here. And so to have this, though, in this showdown, and I think that's what people wanted to see, that, because there were people that were not big fans of Hulk Hogan and were, Ultimate Warrior all the way. And then you had your Hulkamaniacs, and they wanted to see it settled once and for all. And so as far as me thinking, was this a good idea? Yeah, I thought absolutely it was a great idea.
I also agree with you, because think of the past.
And they had things to settle here too, Steve. What was going on with Hulk at the time, and the belt and all this stuff and the titles. And so I thought it was a great storyline and a way to settle it.
Oh, 100%. Because the year before that, you had the Mega Powers explode. Before that, you had WrestleMania have an entire tournament to crown a new champion. Before that, Andre getting body slam. Before that, 3 locations for WrestleMania. Before that, the first WrestleMania. Like, we are building, if we're talking about seasons or like episodes, WrestleMania episodes, we are going up and up and up and up and up, because each year you're trying to achieve something better than you did the year before. And the Ultimate Challenge, I feel like, delivered 100%.
Yes.
April 1st, 1990, SkyDome, first WrestleMania outside of the U.S. Now, I know wrestling is always going to be popular in Canada, but did Vince McMahon think, like, is this a gamble? Is this not a gamble? Like, what do you think he was trying to put through his brain leaving America for Canada?
Well, I think that, sure, was it a gamble? Absolutely. Especially when you're going to go to another country and then try and get a massive crowd there, which, 65,000 plus, was a huge challenge. But at the same time, think about where we were. Business wasn't bad. This is 1990 we're talking, but they were starting to think, okay, and they were used to things how, it kind of went cyclical. It was up and down. And they knew that, we've got to start expanding. Canada was a great place to do it because, of course, Canada was huge for professional wrestling across all of that country, from one end to the other. And you had a lot of territories. So, was it a bit of a gamble? Yes, but it was a great place to start as far as being international. And it was a great event. And they did pack that house. Whether or not, I don't know how many they ended up giving away, but still, you get that many people. It shows that the WWE at the time was very, very popular. So was it a gamble? Absolutely. But that's what they reveled in. Vince knew that that's what he had to do. He had to leap every time with these events. And they just kept paying off.
Oh, yeah. And the arena is so packed that they elevate the ring, just like they did WrestleMania 3, and then they bring back those motorized wrestling carts to bring you from the front to the back. And I always love those. Like, I don't know why those are something that they should have sold as toys for so long, and they just didn't, like the Hasbros. Yeah. But Warrior and Hogan, they decide we're not going to get on those carts. We're going to walk. Because Warrior, his bit is he runs really fast to the ring. What the hell is he going to do? Just sit there and do this while he's sitting on a motorized cart?
Right.
Those are a nice little addition to this WrestleMania, and it's a big, big entrance. But Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Body Ventura are on commentary, and this is their 6th WrestleMania together. And we've talked about how Bobby and Gorilla have quite a rapport, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, but I don't think Jesse and Gorilla get all this credit because Jesse's background as a professional wrestler, I know Gorilla was too, and so was Bobby, but like people really knew Jesse as a wrestler versus Bobby and Gorilla as being wrestlers, depending on your age, I guess. What would you think of the Jesse Gorilla combo?
Well, at that point, Jesse's history in the ring had really nothing to do with him getting over as a credible analyst at the time. I don't even remember, that really ever becoming part of the conversation. And truth be told, he wasn't great in the ring. His gift was his mouth, and all the way along. I mean, he cut great promos. He knew how to sell. So that was his big selling point. And as we've discussed before, now nothing against Jesse. I always said that Jesse I thought was great with Vince. I didn't love the combination of the two of them, but they did well together. I mean, it was very back and forth, but nothing like you'd see with Bobby and Gorilla that the magic that was. But we'd gotten used to that team as far as for the big events was Gorilla and Jesse. And, Jesse was on top of his game as always. And I always love to hear about people asking about Jesse's prep for events. Now, if you watch the openings to these, or they do the little breaks on camera, he would actually, you could tell that he worked those, that he would, I think he'd say, I've been to all this, I've been to this, I've done this, I've been to fights, but WrestleMania is the greatest event ever, or whatever, however he started that. Yeah. And you could tell that was something, that was the actor in him. But as far as when he sat down to that, to the announce booth there, to the desk to do the event, that was it. He didn't take notes. He was, neither did Bobby. But that was all just, go. And Gorilla could do that as well. That's what made him a great play-by-play guy, is that he knew how to get that stuff going with other people sitting next to him, which is a gift. A lot of people don't realize, that's not an easy thing to do, and especially when you're bouncing in between different personalities. But Gorilla was very good at that. But, Jesse was, great just at moments, like he didn't have, as if people know about how a person who was a color analyst prepares for a football game, or baseball game, they, reams of notes. And then you've got somebody who is what they call like a spotter, or, and they are in your ear and they're giving you little fun facts here and there, or they notice things like that. You get a great guy that he's your dude. That wasn't the case. It was just, okay, what's happening up there, and I'm really good at doing this. And that was Jesse.
I love how you brought up Jesse at the beginning of WrestleMania 6 because he does say that. He's like, I've been to the Super Bowl. I've been to the World Series. I've even been to the Rolling Stones, but nothing like this at WrestleMania 6. But even before that, you had Vince McMahon doing a voiceover over the cosmos of Warrior and Hulk Hogan are in the stars, in the galaxy, far beyond beings. And he's just going through it, and you see like a crab, and you see a Zeus, and then you see Warrior.
The constellations.
The constellations, the sky. I always enjoyed Vince McMahon voiceover, and this is one of those particular ones where he doesn't scream until the end because he's like, "Oh, the warrior!
It's WrestleMania."
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He would just keep going.
Oh, you gotta go. Well, you lose your voice though. The first matchup of this event is Koko B. Ware versus Rick the Model Martel. So the first person that everyone sees out the gate is Koko B. Ware, flapping his arms like a bird.
And Frankie was there too.
Yes, of course. Well, because Jack Tunney didn't enforce, get rid of animals by ringside yet. That wouldn't happen until 1991. God damn you, President Jack Tunney. I always will praise you. Though,
and Koko sings on that in his theme song. The people know that. I mean, Koko had a good voice. He did a lot of gospel. He was, a very talented guy. And I've told you about Koko. Koko was one of my favorites. Just a great guy. And I love this. When you tell the stories when he first they hooked him up with Frankie, that bird was just nasty as it could be. And, they're talking about some of the first events went out there and they got him and he's supposed to sit on this perch and he doesn't, he falls off and you go over at him and he's like biting you. Oh man. But, I love Koko and one of the toughest, people I ever met in my life. And I thought a great performer too. And he was only, is only, about 5'7" maybe. So that guy, boy, he could do a lot in that ring. And this matchup I thought was pretty good too, even though he ends up kind of getting squashed in this. But I loved Koko. Koko is still to this day one of my favorites.
Same. I think it's funny that people think, oh, he has got a bird. That's pretty cool. But you're not thinking like, holy shit, this guy's not a bird trainer. He's a professional wrestler. So here you go. Here's a giant parrot. Right. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, it's not like he put the thing in the truck. You got to take this thing and take care of it. And
Did he bring that thing to the hotels with him?
Well, yeah, a lot of times when he was traveling, sometimes they did have him with him, and he'd have to have that thing in the hotel room, and his,
all night long. Imagine sleeping with Coke. Hey, want to share a room with me? No, I don't.
And I'm sure initially it was, sure, he wants to be. It's putting him over, but then after a while, you're like, oh my God, this bird. So.
Well, you had Frankie, you had Matilda, you had
At least he didn't have a python, right, Steve? I mean, geez, imagine somebody having to do that.
I would rather have the bird than have the
snake in the bathtub.
The snake in the bag. That's just me. I think the snake can twist around you and kill you. Frankie the bird's most likely going to be stealing your food from you. Maybe he'll kill you.
Yeah, wouldn't you be sleeping like this?
I would close it. I would put the animals in the bathroom and close the door. That's
what I think he did, but you never know,
Because you hear all these stories about Jake, how there's not, we didn't have just one Damien. We had multiple Damiens over poor reasons of taking care of a snake. I wonder, and I hope not, but there probably was more than one Frankie because of. Yeah,
I was going to say, I think there was.
You're on the road.
Want to get into, but those birds, they're very sensitive, and they get sick. So and when you're taking them all over the place and then putting them on planes and that kind of thing, it ain't good.
God, hey, poor Koko. But he did lose. He had Rick the Model Martel. Everyone kind of thought that the Model was going to fight Tito Santana because the Strike Force broke up back about a year now. So everyone's thinking, okay, we're going to get Strike Force finally having a one-on-one match. They don't. Tito's in a different match in the evening. Maybe a house show, but what's the reasoning you think of not connecting the dots of this seems pretty obvious to have Rick beat Tito or Tito beat Rick? Is it just to keep both of them strong?
Yeah, somebody would have had to go down. And and I think they're trying to push both of them, because the Model gimmick wasn't that old. And, they're trying to put him over. And then Tito was starting to get, a bit of a push as well. And as always, I love when they give these other guys a little shot to, be in that event, and Koko getting on that stage was awesome as well. Nice little payday for him too.
Yeah, these early WrestleManias, you can see every single wrestler that you ever loved is all together on the card. And I think that's what makes it great about this event. But up next is the tag team titles. You're backstage, though. You're interviewing Demolition. And this is one of those fun moments where Demolition keeps talking in puns about how they're going to smash them. They're going to axe them. They're going to destroy them. What was your experience like with Demolition backstage? What were they like as people?
Oh, awesome. It's funny because a lot of these heel tag teams, they're supposed to be big, mean, nasty, horrible people. And they were some of the funniest guys you ever meet. That LOD was like that too. Hawk and Animal were just as funny. But, Barry and Bill were great as well. And they just kept getting better and better, as a tag team. And you start getting that rhythm. And I watched that interview. And I try and think back and it's very sketchy to think, try and pull out those details. But I do remember just how smooth it was with them. They would tell me, what they were going to do. And I just had to make sure I got the mic in the right place. But I just remember how easy they made it. And I thought, Bill initially had the edge as far as cutting promos. But I thought, Barry became really good as well. And that interview that they did for that event I thought was really good. Like you said, it was loaded with puns, but it all worked.
I loved it.
And I even remember afterwards that Bill saying, was there, did we have enough in there? Enough puns in there? They walk it up. I said, I think you got them all.
Yeah, I think we checked them all off. Well, because you even say, it sounds like a demolition derby. And you're like, now you got them. And then they're like looking at you like, now you get it. Like, I got it after a minute of puns.
Okay. Yeah, check. Got that one too. And there was some really funny, there was a lot of funny stuff in those interviews. The one with Gene and Bobby, and what did he call them? The colostomy, and it was supposed to be the I can't remember.
Colostomy? And he's like, colostomy. He's like, no, it's a colossal connection.
Yeah, the colossal connection. And Bobby's like, what did you say?
I didn't say anything.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And in the end, before they go to that, they send the interview, and then Gene's like, does the pensive.
Yes. Did I say what I think I said?
And folks, there was a lot of inside stuff. And Gene was classic and got away with so much. But, Vince knew what he did, and they let him do it. And I'm telling you, I love going back and watching these, because to me, that's especially just from where I came from with them, to watch those. And it's just, to me, it's like watching a great match for me. When I see some of the stuff that Gene did with people, and his timing and what he would say and what he didn't say was worth 1,000 words a lot of time. And especially, on the stage there with Bobby as well. I mean, they were just classic together. So
I'm glad
I really
enjoy
it. I love going back and watching this stuff. And there was so much, we'll get into it, but there was a lot of celebrity presence at this event, which is kind of unusual. I was thinking, like, why Toronto? It wasn't like we're in Los Angeles or Vegas or something. It was like Toronto and all these
they all wanted to be part of WrestleMania, of course.
I guess. I've got some good stories, though, when we get to it.
There was one celebrity, though, they mentioned Jesse on commentary, jumping around for a second, but when Warrior's fighting Hogan and Warrior is getting beat down by Hogan, and Grill's like, can Hogan sustain this? And Jesse says, well, ask Richard Bowser if he can sustain this. And I was like, holy shit. Like, isn't that the guy that Hogan choked out before WrestleMania 1? Then they sued him for $20 million. Belzer for $20 million. I was like, why would you throw that out there on commentary? Like, damn. When I heard him say that, I was like, oh, I don't think anyone's ever picked this up before until like now. Like, it just shocked me to hear that they threw out a guy who sued the WWF and Hulk Hogan for millions of dollars. Yeah. And yet there's Jesse being like, let's just throw in a one-liner and see if anyone notices.
Well, and that, getting back to Jesse, as I said, he was Jesse. And that Vince is backstage going, I can't believe he said that. But Jesse said whatever was on his mind, whatever he thought might work or might create a little, tension out there. He would do it, and that was, yeah. I mean, I do remember thinking like, "Ooh, geez, why would you even say that?" Because it's such
sued.
yeah. Well, and it's such a touchy subject anyway. But that was Jesse.
Yeah.
Love to stir it up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Demolition, though, do win the tag team titles back from Andre and Haku. Andre really can't do much, so Haku's in the ring, and this sets up the scenario of Bobby blaming Andre the Giant for the match. Andre slaps Bobby Heenan, setting up the Andre is now a baby face, and this is the end of Andre the Giant's in-ring career because he tries to continue on, but it's just not the same anymore, and he's out, and a year from now he's on crutches, and then in 93 he passes away. So in reality, did everyone know this was the end of Andre and this was the great moment of let's turn him babyface one more time and get him that audience to cheer him? 65,000 people cheering for him. Like, is that what this moment was all about?
Well, I don't think they were actually thinking it was the end, but I think that they felt it was, we have this big stage and we should celebrate him and get him involved. It wasn't something Andre wanted to go out there and just stand at ringside. But you could see for what he did do in that match, it was hard for him. He was just not. He was really heavy at the time, and everything I think hurt, especially his back. You could just tell by the way he moved. But they did want to get him involved, and you could see that Meng or Haku, had to take on the vast majority of the load for that matchup. But, they still got Andre involved. They'd get him close to the ropes, and he'd get a shot in there. And then, of course, all at the end of it, when it blows up with Bobby and Haku, as, he knocks Bobby around, he's had enough. And, you watching those, and people used to talk about, when Andre really had to watch when he would, smack people, because you don't understand the massive strength that he had until he would do something as simple as slap you. And you could see he didn't want to hurt Bobby. And there's a few of them where he made sure he didn't really even get close. But there were a couple that connected, and you could just see that, like, and Bobby, of course, sold it tremendously. But they had a great affection for each other. Andre really liked Bobby, and I think everybody was feeling the same way. There was a sadness about it all. We didn't know if it was going to be next month, if it was going to be 6 months or a year, but as you said, there was the feeling that the end was coming, and not necessarily his life, but that he couldn't do this anymore. And we've talked before too, as you mentioned, that he was on those metal crutches and basically, it was almost like he was crawling around, and that was really hard to watch too, because Andre didn't have anything else as far as what his life was really focused on. I'm not saying he didn't have another life. He had that horse ranch. He used to love to go there. But this was his life. And when it was over, and Vince was very much torn in the fact that he didn't know how to do it. I think that you've heard about, there was kind of this rift between Andre and Vince at the end there, but Vince didn't want to see him basically humiliated, or him, people seeing him fail. But Andre didn't want to go away either. He loved being backstage. He loved playing cards with the guys. He loved being around that whole atmosphere, but he just physically couldn't do it anymore. And so I think it was very hard for Vince, because he knew he owed a lot to Andre, especially in the early years, and Andre helping put over that whole organization. But at the same time, do you sit there and let that happen? And I don't think Vince wanted to see that happen. And what could he say? And so I think that he endured that Andre, being upset with him and feeling he'd been betrayed, but knew I just can't let this happen to him, even if he doesn't realize it.
Well, Andre the Giant is the first person ever inducted into the WWEF Hall of Fame. So even if there was a rift at the end, unfortunately, Andre didn't know that he was going to be the first name inducted into this Hall of Fame that now has carried the weight of so many different names. And over the years, people either love the Hall of Fame or hate the Hall of Fame. But when it was initially created, it put in the right person first, and that was Andre the Giant. And he did leave for WCW towards the end of his life, and that created even a bigger rift. And that was the end. He passes away. And we talked about it on our Demolition podcast, though, about how Demolition being given the nod to work with Andre, because think about the people who did before: Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake, Hulk Hogan. You don't really hear many other people getting to work with Andre, especially around this time, and Demolition got the opportunity to do it. So I think it's pretty awesome to see that Demolition was such a popular tag team. They're like, all right, well, Andre can work with them, and I know Andre was friends with them as well. So it was just a nice cap off at the end of having Andre in the little ring. He's waving to the audience. The audience is crazy for him. 65,000 people cheering for him. It was a great send off for WrestleMania 6 for him. Unfortunately, what happened at the end is, life happens. But Hercules versus Earthquake is up next. Both men are sort of undefeated around this time. And Earthquake has a record of beating 30 men in a row. And now he just defeats Hercules here. Now, Hercules, I have a question for you about Hercules, because he always confused me. Because sometimes he pretends he's Hercules. He's, living on Mount Olympus. Other times he pretends he's Hercules Hernandez, his heritage. I'm so confused sometimes on who is Hercules. Is he Zeus's dad? Is he just a wrestler or also named Hercules with the chains? What were your thoughts on Hercules?
Well, I think, and to me, he was always Hercules, the god. And of course they went back to when it came down to it. When it got down to being down and dirty. He became Hercules Hernandez. When he came out to that ring, though, with the chains and everything like that,
swinging around,
and overall, he was supposed to be the Greek god, argue one way or the other if he filled that role, but it was a good gimmick for him, and he was quite the strong man in real life. There was no question about that. So the gimmick fit him, but I think when it came down to it, he was most comfortable as Hercules Hernandez and just mixing it up in the ring.
All right, because for sometimes he'd be like, "I live on Mount Olympus." I was like, "Do you?" Like,
get back to your gimmick, Ray. Come on.
I don't know. Are you in Power and Glory now? So when you're in Power and Glory, are you still with Zeus? I never understood sometimes where it was dropped and brought up again, but that's just me nitpicking, I guess. But Earthquake defeats Hercules here, which again, in the next pay-per-view, SummerSlam 1990, would be Earthquake against Hulk Hogan. And so it's really nice to see that Earthquake.
Yeah, they're putting him over, no question about it. And, Hercules is a great guy to put in the ring against him to make it happen. And this is that whole thing that he's an unstoppable force. When Earthquake's in there and he squashes you, it's over.
It is over. And I'm surprised because he used to be the Canadian Earthquake. So this audience would have been like, we're in Canada, Earthquake. There is some questionable things about patriotism in this, because let's talk about celebrities for a minute. So we don't have America the Beautiful. We have Robert Goulet starting off WrestleMania 6 singing
Oh, Canada.
So we get that. But we also have Steve Allen. We have Mary Tyler Moore here. Yeah. We have Rona Barrett. So we have all these celebrities. And let's go through them for a little bit, because some people who are listening to this may be like, who? So Mary Tyler Moore, you were in the audience asking fans about rhythm and blues about to sing their new song, Hunka 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 Love. 3 hunkas. You've been pointing this out to us a couple times. And you interview this one kid. And you're like, so kid, how you doing? He's like, I don't like it. You're like, do you know the name of the song? He's like, no, they stink. Like, all right. You move on to another person. But then you find Mary Tyler Moore and you interview her. And I got to tell you, she was sitting front row, but she also looked like a deer in headlights. Now, for you, They're supposed to be interviewing her about
Yeah.
WrestleMania, about Rhythm and Blues, about all this stuff. But are some celebrities just clueless and they're just here for a paycheck?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that because Mary Tyler Moore, I grew up watching her shows. I mean, with the, Dick Van Dyke, that show, and then also the Mary Tyler Moore show, the one that she had where, and so, I was thrilled to even meet her, but there was no chance to get together before and say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what we're going to do. Like her people, just wasn't going to happen. And I think she was there with her husband at the time. I don't know if they stayed married. I don't, whatever. But he was with her. And it was just kind of like, okay, we had the spotters in there, the camera. They said, you're going to go over there. And I'm working, like you said, I talked to a kid. So that was kind of planted to go, I'm going to start here and I'm going to go there. I'm going to get to Mary. It's Mary Tyler Moore. Hey. And seriously, I wondered, have you ever seen anything that we've done? And why did you come? I don't know. Maybe her husband was a big wrestling fan. I don't know. But as you say, everything I said. So, what do you think about that? Yeah, they are great. It's like, it was, I don't know if any of her answers were more than 5 seconds long, and I'm still trying to push it. And then I just remember, Kerwin in my ear, like, okay, wrap it, get out of there. She's not going to work with us here. I mean, I did everything I can, but it was cool to interview Mary Tyler Moore because, I just remember watching her as a kid. But that was certainly an interesting encounter. But that goes to show you when they just have. I wish that I would have gotten a chance to just do an aside with her and say, "Look, Mary, I'm going to ask you about this," and she said, "I don't know who he is," and I'll say, "Well, I would have given her some points, or something to say to help." But it is. She just looked like, and even like you said, deer in headlights, because the eyes were even kind of like, "Oh boy,
Like,
I don't know
it's great to be here." Yeah. Is it though?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about Robert Goulet because Robert Goulet is an interesting story too. Now, him singing the Canadian national anthem is not a big stretch because he wasn't a Canadian, but was, had lived in Canada for a long time and I think his parents were French Canadian. Okay. So he had that connection anyway. But what's interesting here now, I don't know if people remember, but in 1965, Robert Goulet sang the national anthem for the Muhammad Ali Sonny Liston fight, and he booted the lyrics, and like I said, he was more Canadian than he was American, and he didn't get the lyrics down. He claimed that he was tired, he didn't have a chance to learn the lyrics, and like how does that and he booted him. So I think it was like this stigma with him to ever sing. I don't think he'd sung anthems at places ever since then. And so when they contacted his people and he didn't want to do whatever, and I think when it came down to it, is because he didn't want to have another experience like that. Well, what they told him was, look, we've got these screens up all over the arena, and we're going to put the words up. Basically have a teleprompter up there, and I would have, I think he probably knew the Canadian national anthem, but if anything glitched, they were going to be right there. The words are going to be right there. So he agrees to do it and frickin' nails it. Yeah. And I remember seeing him backstage. He was frickin' ecstatic because I think it was one of those things with him, that had, if you've ever had something that you totally screwed up and then you get another shot at it and then you fix it and then you go, okay, now I can finally put this frickin' thing out of my brain. And I think that's what it was for him. And then to have that, be in front of that audience. And I'm telling you, man, that guy was just beaming. He was so happy. And that's what I remember thinking that, because we'd all had a dog like that, and I finally get to let that one go. So that was my Robert Goulet memory. Steve Allen now was another great moment. If everyone remembered that Steve Allen is in the locker room in the shower for the acoustic. They got a whole grand piano in there, and they got Nikolai and Boris in the shower, and he's going to sing the Russian national anthem.
Oh yeah.
And of course, Steve Allen, if anybody remembers who he was a very famous talk show host and comedian, and was kind of the first Johnny Carson. And I don't know, you think about some of these people that are just so random. Like Steve Allen, where has he been?
It's a random.
But he does this bit with them, and I'll tell you right now, Nikolai and Boris they didn't have a freaking they don't know who Steve Allen is, and they're just rolling with it. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. I remember looking at it again, and I still think it's hilarious because he's totally goofing on them, and they don't know what's going on. And I also remember my other memory of Steve Allen is that the makeup stylist person that the WWE had, Jill, and I can't remember her last name, but she worked at Hamilton, and they brought her to for the event to do hair and makeup for people. And I remember her telling me that Steve Allen's people had sent her basically this binder that was pages long on how to put his toupee on. Now that's a fun fact that I don't know, but I just remember her telling me it and looking at this thing about, you put the glue here and then it's set. And I'm thinking, if I got a hairpiece, man, I'm the one putting that thing on.
Yes.
But they had a whole thing of how his makeup and how his hairpiece went on for this. But that still, to me, that was one of the greatest WrestleMania moments is Steve Allen in the shower with Nikolai and Boris.
Was about to sing too, and finally he's joking with him the whole time. Then I know when someone flushes the toilet, I was like, shit. And then and they grab their noses and they're screaming about someone pooped. And
Vince loved that. He loved the toilet humor. God, and it did it worked. It was and I think they did that like in one take. Steve Allen was very good, and of course Boris and Nikolai didn't have to do a whole hell of a lot except react. But classic WrestleMania moments, and I think Steve Allen, he's in the Hall of Fame. I think.
I don't know. Maybe, possibly. There's a few.
He should be if he's not.
There's a few people. Yeah, let's get that going now.
Yeah, but it was an interesting that a whole collection of celebrities. You think about it over the years, just how random. I mean, we had Liberace and
Ali.
Bob Uecker, and But hey.
Mary Hart, I think, was there. You had Elvira once.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Rona Barrett was at this one.
Rona Barrett was also.
We were talking before, and you had no idea who Rona Barrett was. Well, because I'm old, I remember that she was one of the original, the gossip columnists who actually made the transition to television. And she was kind of before Entertainment Tonight, and she would go on and this celebrity gossip. So that's why she was there to interview Elizabeth.
Okay. Yeah, she puts over Liz hard where she's like, I've interviewed celebrities and musicians, but you are the greatest one I've ever interviewed.
Yeah. Marilyn Monroe. No, not close.
No. Miss Elizabeth. Miss Elizabeth. Yeah, it is pretty funny. They did bring Steve Allen on commentary during one match, and he flat out acknowledges this is the greatest thing he's ever seen in his life. And so
has no idea.
He's probably like, I don't know what's going on. I'm up here in the rafters with Jesse.
He should have been sitting next to Mary Tyler Moore. They could have both been clueless to the.
This is a great show. I'm having fun.
No, he did, and he appreciated entertainment. So I'm sure that was genuine from Steve Allen, and he was a classic. I mean, that was phenomenal to have somebody like that who was really an icon in television. He's was one of the originals and started and helped shape that whole concept of night talk shows.
Wow. Again, people don't give in today's world where you have certain talk shows ending or being not the ones they used to, because before you'd have a celebrity get interviewed by Steve Allen, for instance. Well, the only way to know what that celebrity was doing was to watch these interviews or read a magazine article. Now I can go on social media and figure out what John Cena ate for breakfast today instead of watching him on a late night talk show, because I don't need to wait until 11:30 to watch him. I can figure out what's happening in his life instantly with social media, with online. So It's changed, but yeah, it's a
Oh, it
weird
sure
crop of
has.
celebrities because you said over the years they've had people who are very topical. They've had people who are very, bring the youth movement in. This group of people, I'm not sure what celebrities the combo of bring. It was like take a dart, throw it at the wall, and
Yeah.
hit some celebrities and see what we can bring in. Nothing wrong with them, but it was a little strange. Moving on,
It
though,
was
Mr. Perfect took on Bruce
random.
the Barber Beefcake. We did a Mr. Perfect podcast where we talked about his career, and I flat out suggested that Beefcake defeated Perfecteer because of Hulk Hogan's political influence. Maybe. I have no facts. These are just opinions and conspiracy theories with my tinfoil hat on. But yet, it is a good match. But what happens at the end is the Genius gets knocked out. He gets put in the sleeper hold. The Genius is Mr. Perfect's manager. Well, he's supposed to be knocked out, so he can't just get up and walk away when things are going the way he doesn't want them to. Beefcake starts shaving off the Genius's hair. Well, if you don't know, the Genius, Lenny Poffo, is the brother of the Macho Man, Randy Savage. According to the rumors, after this happens, Macho Man goes backstage to confront Brutus Beefcake about pretty much doing whatever he wanted to do to his brother in front of 65,000 people because his brother was selling that he got put out with a sleeper hold. Did you hear anything about this?
Well, it was just everything about that match to me was kind of strange and forced in a sense. And it wasn't a bad match. Brutus could go. He of course had that connection to the Hulkster, and that never that idea and basically you'd say nepotism in a sense that gave him a lot of opportunities. But Brutus was good in his own right. It's just that stigma stayed with him. But overall, I mean, it was a good match. But as we mentioned before, what was the Genius doing with Mr. Perfect? I still it just doesn't make any sense. Kurt didn't need anybody with him at all. And so was it a sense just to keep Lanny working and, part of the mix there?
Keep Savage happy.
But you could see at the end of that thing, and I'm sure Kurt made it very clear up front, I'll do this, but that guy is not cutting my hair. It's just not happening. So as you see, what takes place is, Kurt gets knocked out, basically hits the ring post and gets knocked out. Brutus gets the cover, and then he's going to cut Mr. Perfect's hair. In the meantime, the Genius goes over and steals the shears, and it gives Mr. Perfect the opportunity to get the Scoot out of the ring. And when he chases down Lanny, what's going to happen now? I thought it was funny, though, when he gets him back in the ring and he's going to start cutting his hair. He's already got a really bad haircut anyway. Did you look at that?
Well, because at the Royal Rumble, Beefcake already did this to Genius a little bit. So he did a little bit of it, but now he's going full force.
So... But to me, it was just shenanigans. That's what I used to say. Just what shenanigans are we going to do here? And that's what that was at the end of it. And I don't know. I don't want to say it soiled the match, but it just was shenanigans as far as I was concerned. Remember that word there, son. Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
That's what they're doing in there at the end of it. You got a good match, and then you do your shenanigans. I don't like it one bit.
I didn't think we'd get impressions and accents today on WrestleMania 6, but here we are in Canada. Where's your Canadian accent?
Never know what you're going to get from Mooney.
That's true. That's true. It's just funny, though, over the years, you've heard Savage always protecting his brother, even in WCW, where Lenny Poffo never had one match. But over lawsuits, contracts came out, and it was revealed that Lenny Poffo was getting over $100,000 a year in WCW for 2 years. He didn't wrestle one match. Now, Eric Bischoff has clarified
with the deal.
Eric Bischoff, though, has clarified that Macho Man, Randy Savage, was such a good brother. He took the money out of his own contract and gave it to Lenny. Now, I don't even know how it is. I don't know, lawyers speak. I'm not sure that's even possible, but somehow that's what Eric Bischoff says. So in reality, I don't know, but if Beefcake took advantage of the Genius and in backstage, Macho Man is in Beefcake's face about this, it's like, well, buddy, your guy's a crony. Like, you're talking about a totem pole. He's in the bottom. Like, getting his head shaved is one thing. Someone else can get their head shaved too. Like, calm yourself.
Yeah. And, come on, let's give credit here, or just understanding that Lanny was Randy's brother. and they came up together through the family, and their father had a little territory, and they were close. So yeah, I appreciated the fact that he wanted to take care of his brother, and I felt like in a lot of instances, these guys work their ass off, and they do deliver and bring a lot of money into the company, and if you can help take care of somebody else that's with you along for that ride, why not? And
Yeah.
it wasn't as though, Lanny wasn't, worthless or something like that. I mean, he could do a lot of things in the ring. And so, yeah, I didn't really have a problem with it. And if they go down to WCW and where everybody was getting that cash grab, sure, then good for Lanny. I'm glad that happened.
That's a good point too. Before this matchup, though, you did get to interview Bruce the Barber Beefcake backstage, and you're holding a piece of paper, and Beefcake's like has these giant hedge clippers, and he's sitting there talking about Mr. Perfect, how he has this perfect record. I've been looking at his record, Mooney, and he's got a perfect record. But tonight, and he starts cutting it. Your hand is
I know
right there. This giant hedge clippers. Are you saying like, sir? I like my fingers.
It could have. I mean, those things were, he had those things sharp. They wanted to be able to cut the paper. That would have taken. If you see him gotta look at him like, dude.
Like, dude, my mullet, don't cut.
I don't remember him telling me I'm going to do that. I don't. Maybe I'm sure maybe he did it because, if you see, I've got like the paper. I'm holding it about as far end of the thing as I can, before it falls out of my hand. But yeah, that was uncomfortable moment, I guess you could say. Yeah, I didn't want to lose. I wanted to keep my digits.
You still got them, so good for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Next up, we talked about a whole hour about this event, and this topic has ruined my YouTube channel for a little bit, and so we'll just say Roddy Piper's back.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
Is missing from the broadcast on the WWE Vault YouTube channel. This is where I watched this the other day because Peacock, it's everywhere, but the controversy around this is the black face paint, and the funny rib though is how after this, where Piper is going backstage to get the solution to get the paint off because he didn't want it to come off while he was sweating in the ring. Well, Andre and Arnold Skaaland remove the solution, put water in there, so it does not work. So Piper has to go around with this makeup on his body for at least a few weeks, and we did a whole podcast about it, and almost got canceled for it, so we're going to move on.
Yes.
If you want to hear about that, it's up there, and enjoy
Steve
that.
needs to get paid.
Yeah, I gotta get paid.
Come on,
YouTube. Someone complained. Fun fact behind the curtain, folks. Someone complained about this, and that's why we got demonetized on YouTube for a little bit. So moving on.
But it just shows you how, even to this day, it's a very sensitive subject.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Agreed. All right,
next.
When I was looking for controversy, I found it, and it found me. So that's what happened.
It sure did. Okay.
And that was my fault. That's my fault. Hart Foundation take on the Bolsheviks, and their Steve Allen segment lasted longer than their actual match.
I think you're right.
18 seconds this match lasts.
Yeah, well, it did last longer. Yeah.
Canadian Heroes Bret Hart is here, and it's just funny because years would go on where Bret would come out with a Canadian flag and be so pro-Canadian. Here, it's like it's not really a thing. They're not really leaning into, hey, he's from Canada yet.
Yeah.
Why not promote that he's from Canada? Like, really? Like, your hometown heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. You would have thought they would have sold that thing. He would have come out there. But, it was like sole focus on Hart Foundation and what they're doing. Now, it's interesting, though, because, you talk about the territories there, and just a lot of people, they're like separate countries from where you're from. And some of them, are heavily like Montreal, like that French Canadian, and, other places are different. So I don't know what their thinking was. But that was kind of surprising to me, too. But it was like we saw, this was like a very quick whole segment for the show. Like, boom, it's over. So
And
I
the
don't know.
Hart Foundation haven't had the tag team title since October of 1987, and they will regain it at SummerSlam 1990, defeating the heel Demolition with Crush along their side and the introduction of Legion of Doom. So I think this is really just to, like, all right, let's get them out there. It's WrestleMania. We got to put everybody on this card. So you're here. Beat them in 18 seconds, because I'm nothing against Nikolai and the Bolsheviks, but did you want to see the match go longer than 18 seconds?
Yeah.
No.
I was fine.
I was fine with just moving past that.
They were much more entertaining in the shower.
Yes, I agree. No, we talked about earlier how Rick the Model Martel did not fight Tito Santana at this event, Strike Force, because we thought each man should level up and have a win. Well, the Model wins this match. The next step is Tito Santana versus the Barbarian. Barbarian beats Tito Santana with a top rope clothesline, which I think is always perfect, because that's really something you didn't see in the early 90s or even the 80s. Why this random up and down with Tito? Because I always thought Tito was so popular, but yet maybe he was so popular it didn't matter for you if he won or lost.
Yeah. And I love Tito. You know that. But he was just one of those guys that you could never get past Midcard. He just it's try, and they did big pushes. They tried with the Matador and everything like that. But people loved him. They did. I don't think you could find anybody in an arena and say, what do you think of Tito Santana? And say, oh, I hate that guy. I think he's not. Everybody loved him. It's just that they only loved him so much. Like it wasn't where they wanted to see him. At the top for some reason. As we've talked about many other superstars that just don't have that it thing. And so what you do is, you love them because they're such great workers. They're so devoted to what they do. They're very entertaining. They're popular. And so they can help us put other guys over too.
That's a good point.
And and Barb was another, a guy at the time, like he, like you said, coming off top rope, he could do a lot of things in there, and just, one of those nasty performers. But he had to have somebody else with him, and that's why Bobby was, his manager and everything like that. And so there's only so much you can do with a guy like that. But, to this day, he was the one that went over.
Yeah, and then, earlier in this year of 1990, Mr. Fuji was the manager of the Warlord and the Barbarian, the Powers of Pain. Well, he sells those contracts to individuals. The Warlord goes with Slick. Barbarian goes with Bobby Heenan. Now, I didn't really ever see a problem with Powers of Pain. Like, why? Was it Legion of Doom is coming in, so we should break up the team that sort of looks the most like them?
Yeah, I don't know, because remember at the time there was plenty of room for tag teams, and whether or not they, gave big pushes or not, but they were functional tools in the whole tag team operation that was going on at the time. I just think that they felt it wasn't getting over, so let's split them up and see if they can do something in singles competition. And one of the things with like having Barbarian with Mr. Fuji, wasn't a great combination. And Mr. Fuji could do what he did, but he still wasn't, as far as an orator, right. Far, with interviews, he just could only do so much. And Bobby was beyond that. Bobby could go on and put people over. And so that was as far as giving him the best tools he could possibly have to succeed, putting him with Bobby was the best option.
Yeah. Up next, though, you're backstage with Dusty Rhodes and Sweet Sapphire, and you're interviewing them about the next coming matchup. Now, what was it like? We did a whole podcast about Dusty Rhodes coming into the WWF, but backstage with Dusty Rhodes, what's his prep time? Is he coming in blind? Like, how long does this take to get through? Because he seems so comfortable in what he's doing, because he's talking about the crown jewels, Macho King. You can't be a king, you can have a crown, but you're not. Without royalty, without jewels, you're not a real king. what was it like working with Dusty Rhodes? Because everyone in today's world always admires him.
Well, as I said, talk about orators. Dusty was a master, and his promos were fantastic. Put him in any situation. Here he was in the polka dots, making it work, putting it over. So whatever the situation, he's going to go up against the Macho King, and we have this odd tag team matchup with Sapphire actually getting into the ring too against Sensational Sherry, which was really weird for me to see Sherry kind of in wrestling gear and wrestling boots, because you've gotten so used to her being in the fishnet and the big spikes, and boy, she could work in those things. I mean, imagine what she getting into the ring and working in shoes like that. Just shows you the talent that she had. But this was a real gimmick match to me. So
it's the first ever mixed tag match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and boy, it was an interesting mix for sure. And Sapphire, I didn't have a clue what she did. I think she'd done some, been at some of these low-level shows or something. She was mostly just a huge fan. So, but Sherry helped her out, and that was one thing that was awesome about Sensational Sherry, is that she was all about the business. And if you put her in a situation, whether or not she liked it or felt that this was what she wanted to do, whatever, she knew that was her job. And you see in that match, she did everything she could to help Sapphire in this. And for what it's worth, it was as good as it could be. I'll leave it at that. But and certainly had to be the biggest moment of Sapphire's life. Being a part of that. Can you imagine?
The
You're in there,
backstory
you're
for her
in
being a
match.
fan.
Yeah,
she was a fan, and then you came in and got brought in.
Yeah,
and
right.
you're,
I think
now you work with Dusty Rhodes, like one of the greatest of all time, and now
which was one of her favorites of all. I mean, I think she loved Dusty. So the chance she got the opportunity to work with him, and then you're in the ring too with Randy Savage and Sensational Sherry. Yeah, talk about
WrestleMania
achievement at WrestleMania. God, no kidding.
Like, you're not just in the match on Superstars, a wrestling challenge. You are in this. So you said Sherry was comfortable working with Sapphire, because I know, as you would see as years go on, like, Sherry's very protective of her role, because she'd always say, like, oh, you're just a girl. Like, no, she's one of, like, the guys people would say. Like, don't mess with Sherry. So how do you think she was comfortable working with someone who wasn't actually a trained wrestler?
Well, I think, certainly there was no threat that Sapphire would show her up somehow.
Yeah.
But she was a true professional, and Sherry could work with anyone. She, when she was in that ring or ringside, didn't matter who it was. She was, she could work with anybody and take bumps and deliver bumps right back in the mix. And I mentioned before that, if she was in there with a man or something doing, and he was supposed to clothesline her and he took it easy, oh my God, pray for his soul, because she would be, in his face and telling him, you deliver that, you do it. Otherwise she would deliver her own receipt. So she gave as good as she got. And she helped cross that line for a lot of women. As I've said before, that, the women in professional wrestling owe that woman a lot for being able to make it very clear that there weren't many that could do it, but there were women who could go toe-to-toe with the best of the best out there and take it all and really be able to work. So this was just another example. I can't even imagine, like, she's thinking, what am I going to do with this person? How am I going to work with her? But, they worked it out.
And then Miss Elizabeth shows up as the crown jewels with Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire to really set off Macho King. And so now you have 3 women in one match in reality, which is not really a thing you see in the early 80s and early 90s, of multiple women. Sherry's powerful, Liz super powerful, Sapphire, you have your thoughts on her. So Elizabeth coming back. She's been gone for a year since the Mega Powers exploded. Now with that interview earlier at WrestleMania earlier in this night, where they're asking, "Where have you been? Why aren't you here? What's going on?" And why? As a on not just as a fly in my hat, not just as a performer. Why do you think she wasn't on television? Because easily she could have been inserted to other things without Macho Man. But is it more like Macho Man just wanted her to be home, or is it more to that?
Yeah, I think there was a lot, like you said. I think she just had gotten tired of the road. I mean, I remember there were, rumors of it. Maybe she was going to, having a child, or she was, pregnant or something like that. But I think that it was just, after a long stretch, they'd been, at it for a long time, and that life is really tough. And I think she just needed a break. There may have been cracks in that relationship going on. So I just think there was a lot happening, but I think that's really what it just came down to, is she just needed to, get off the road and just chill and just be able to, have some kind of a life, a normal life.
Yeah, this is the 8th match, though.
But as you can see, she couldn't stay away, though. I mean, I don't think that was something that somebody shoved her in front of the truck there to go back at it. I think that after a while, okay, she was ready to do something again.
What's crazy, though, is in the WWF, though, she disappears, and she doesn't come back until WrestleMania 7 to reunite with Macho Man. Then she returns back in early 92 to set up other naked pictures of her at WrestleMania 8. When she joins WCW in 95, she's on Nitro every week with Ric Flair and the Macho Man. I just wonder why that she was removed from WWF television, but yet in WCW, it was she's here every week on Nitro, on the shows. It just felt, why disappear now when you're one of the hottest characters there was, especially because Sherry's not wearing itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikinis. We brought it before. Liz just in a bathing suit on a poster sold like crazy. I don't know why WCW was around, not in WWF. Either way, Sapphire did pin.
Well, she had
Sherry.
to make a living at that point. She was on her own, basically, and so she had to make a living. Prior to that, and the money was really good early on there, and with Randy. But after that, there's many tales of a lot of times it doesn't go so far. So I think probably when it came down to, and I certainly don't know, but I imagine that she had to make a living too at that point.
That makes sense. Somewhere in the show, I don't have it written down, but we'll talk about it right now. Rhythm and Blues have a concert with Diamond Dallas Page driving down in a pink Cadillac. The Bushwhackers interrupt this as well. This is all before when you talked about you interviewing Mary Tyler Moore, how she was going to be excited for this Rhythm and Blues song, Hunka 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 Love.
Yeah.
Boy, you talk about crashing and burning on live television. Dude, this is horrible. And maybe someone thinks it's hilarious and it's fun. I'm sorry. You're wrong. Because Honky Tonk Man is sort of singing. You have the Honkettes doing the real part, the Honka Honka Burning Love. And then it's time for Greg the Hammer Valentine with his jet black hair to sing. And he forgot every word. He's Honka Honka Honky Love. What the hell? Was there no practicing? There was no rehearsal? What are we doing here with Greg the Hammer Valentine?
Yeah. Yeah, that was not a great moment in music, was it? No. Side note here, though, the Diamond Dallas Page was his WrestleMania debut.
In a pink Cadillac?
And and he tells the story, that was his Cadillac. That's how he got involved. Somebody said, hey, we need a Cadillac. And they said, hey, we know this guy. And
did he also work for a strip club? That's why they knew him.
No, he was a man. Well, yeah, it was a club that they went to. I don't think it was a strip club. It was
just a
It
club.
was a popular, it was a popular nightclub that he managed, and a lot of the guys would go in there. That's how he got into it. That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
But he had this Cadillac, and he tells a story. I think it was Pat Patterson called him and said, would you like? Can you come up? We'll get you to your Cadillac. And Dallas is like, yeah. And they said, well, what do you want for it? And he said, just you pay to get it up there and let me drive it. And I don't think he didn't get any other money to do that. But, Dallas is just,
he's a saint.
Yeah, but the way his mind works, he was thinking, and because the way he interacts with people, that it was just another opportunity to get in the door. And, they don't pay me anything. Just bring me up there and, just laid another track for him on that journey that he was taking. But I just thought that was so typical Dallas, that he, just seized an opportunity. So anyway, but you're right about the you would have thought that somebody would have said, let's see what he sounds like, or let's do a rehearsal. That's where you do it before.
So there wasn't a rehearsal?
Do it.
I'd hope.
I honestly, I don't think so. I think, I don't know, or maybe he just totally blew the lines, but I don't remember hearing anything backstage of them warming up. That's all I can tell you. So maybe they were off somewhere else.
Me.
Yeah,
it was the Honkats who carried that performance, and the Bushwhackers show up and they destroy the guitars, and Jesse the Body Ventura is very upset that they interrupted one of the greatest performances of all time. I think Jesse might have been on a little drunk with Steve Allen.
Well,
possibly.
and I was a huge fan of Honky Tonk Man. He could, he was made me laugh every time I saw him, because he had that, this bad Elvis, but he pulled it off, and the moves and everything, and he had that guitar and be totally out of tune. He didn't know how to play that thing,
It was great.
Yeah.
I love the character.
Yeah. Greg, they could have just kept in the background. I don't know what the heck they were thinking.
Yeah, I don't either, but
Yeah.
it seems like this whole entire event, there's like a match people want to see. The match people are like, what's this?
Those guys said it's shenanigans there.
But like
Steve, there's Steve Fall. There's the shenanigans. Why do we have so many shenanigans going on?
What is that coffee? We're on to match number 9. There's 14
Irish
matches.
whiskey. That's what's in here, lad.
Jesus.
Laddie.
Starting early for Mr. Mooney here. The Rockers are up next, taking on the Orient Express, a name you can't use in today's world. Orient Express win the match via countout after Fuji throws salt in Jenny's eyes. It's a great match, and the Rockers would fight the Orient Express again. I think it's Royal Rumble 1991, and it's a great match. It's unbelievable, but it's still like there's a pattern to this WrestleMania where it's like people wanted to see this, people didn't want to care about this. People wanted to see this. All right, go to the bathroom, buy merch. All right, you want to see this because up next, $1 Million Man versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Of course, you want to see this match.
I wanted to see that.
These two are the greatest in the golden era, especially around this time. Now, the storyline, they play you a video package. It's very weird because they show you like 8 months ago, the $1 Million Man took Jake the Snake Roberts out. He doesn't return for another like 7 months after that. The real backstory to that is Jake had a problem with substance abuse, so they had to get him off television somehow, and $1 Million Man taking him out. But that's a long time, though, for a very popular wrestler to be removed from television and not really feeling the burn of missing one of these characters. What was it like seeing a wrestler like this, Jake the Snake Roberts, who clearly all these wrestlers are doing something backstage that aren't legal, but Jake the Snake, he's one of those stories that you hear more than others. Why is that the case?
Well, somebody, and have known people throughout your life too that, they call people like social drinkers that can do that kind of thing. You could say at the time, everybody was doing something. Yeah, there was a lot of all kinds of stuff happening on the road, and these guys doing what they had to do to get into that ring, to get into the squared circle. Others were just better at dealing with it. There were a few exceptions that took it more seriously and stayed away from things like that, but that was pretty much the exception. And Jake was not one of those people. He just, it just got the best of him. And as we saw, it happen with many others. So, and then when it gets to a point where it is impacting what you can do, fortunately, the company was, I don't want to say compassionate because it was all about business. You needed these guys. Jake was somebody who was a moneymaker for them, and they needed him healthy. So him stepping away and, getting cleaned up was necessary. I'm glad that in a situation that's the way it was because, like I said, it was business. And Not that they didn't take care of low level guys as well, but not with the same fervor, I will tell you. And Jake was an earner, so they needed him back, and that was something that was very important to them. But it just kind of made it clear at that point that he had some serious problems, and they had to do something about it.
And again, when you see Jake the Snake backstage with Mean Gene cutting his promo, talking about greed and talking about how he's going to make $1 Million Man get on his knees. He's watched $1 Million Man make other people get on their knees and ask for money. Well, he's going to make $1 Million Man grovel here at WrestleMania 6. And I thought that was great because the storyline kind of is like, oh, well, Jake stole the $1 Million Championship from him because $1 Million Man takes things from other people. The Robin Hood storyline here. It was a nice touch because Jake the Snake Roberts, you know, we talked about it before, Golden Era. I've come to the conclusion that he has the greatest storylines in the Golden Era, next to Hulk Hogan. Like, there's no way you can touch him. And what he's been working with Andre, he's been working with Warrior, Hogan, $1 Million Man, Macho Man. He slaps Liz, like he turns Warrior almost heel. Like, there's a lot to Jake the Snake Roberts. But here, another count out. Ted DiBiase wins by count out. We just saw a match with count out right before that.
Yeah. I don't know that. You know, you could do so much with these guys, and that's how we end it, you know?
Continue the storyline, I guess.
Yeah, but I do want to mention here, you know, you talk about all these great storylines with Jake, and don't think for a second, you know, he just got lucky or his character was so, you know, easy to plan storylines with. That's not necessarily the case. And as I've mentioned before, that, you know, Jake was really good at understanding his character and being creative of what, you know, you could do with him. And so he was as much a part of a lot of the things that he got involved in on his own, you know, that he would say, you know, hey, what about this? Let's try this, you know, and, you know, and he was just really good at that. I think that he would have made a great booker if given the opportunity. And he thought that that's kind of where he was going to go with the company. And Vince basically shut that down when Pat came back. But I thought that he could have been a great benefit to the company with that part of his repertoire. But I think, you know, you need to give him a lot of credit. He did have some great storylines, but he had a lot to do with that.
He's one of the greatest promos of all time.
Yeah,
People give Piper a lot of credit. People give The Rock a lot of credit, but Jake the Snake Roberts, like this dude, he'd always say, I remember interviewing him and he'd say, I would talk even softer and softer. So you'd have to get closer to the television to hear me because instead of Warrior, and again, nothing against Warrior, his technique was screaming and yelling. That was his thing.
Well, as with a lot of guys.
But
the
Jake,
intensity, Randy, and, you know.
Quiet. And so
I know what you're thinking.
Like, I don't know what he's saying, but he's freaking me out, man.
Yeah. I call it the slow burn. I always say it's a slow burn. It's, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, it's,
damn.
You know, Jack Tunney taught me a lot of things, you know, and you're being like,
what did he teach you?
How to cheat, how to steal. Awesome.
It's so fun, man.
One of the
Mr.
best.
Mooney's been practicing his impressions in the mirror recently.
No. Oh, come on.
Wow.
It's just being around those guys for so long, it kind of sticks in your brain.
Next time I see
and
you,
nobody touches Bruce.
No. When they had that show
Bruce
on the network, he tried to make his do impressions, but he held a mask over his face because he didn't want to insult JR by doing a closed eye and his mouth twisted, like this. And he didn't want to do that. So I don't want to get canceled again. So moving on, Big Boston versus Akeem. The Twin Towers have broken up. Big Boston recently turned babyface. So we're just kind of wrapping up the Twin Tower storyline here. Big Bossman actually gives Akeem his boss man slam with one arm. And that is damn impressive. But this is kind of the end of Akeem. You know, we don't really see him do much after this. Big Boss Man, huge push. He goes off to work with Hogan. He goes off to be a part of one of my favorite Survivor Series teams of all time with Hogan. So there's a lot going on there. But Akeem, it's the end. Why the end for Akeem?
Well,
how long can you juke and jive as the
actor? I was going to say that. And you know, I'm telling you, right? And I think he became disenchanted, and a lot of it, as in many cases, he felt that he wasn't earning enough, and even says, you know, it was at some point where it was costing me to do this. Well, whether or not that was true, But yeah, he became disenchanted and then had another opportunity to go earn some money and took it. But the Big Boss Man at this point was on a great trajectory, moving up through the ranks, and deservedly so. And I've mentioned many times how much I really love Boss Man. I just thought all the way around he was the whole package, and worked really hard at it because initially he wasn't as great doing the promos and but he grew into that where he was just phenomenal, and the whole package with the nightstick and the way and what. He never gets enough credit to me on just how athletic he was. I mean, he could do the splits. I mean, and he'd get up on the ropes, and he just did a lot of moves that I don't think people really recognize just how difficult that is for an exceptionally large human to do. So deservedly so, he got a big push and really had a great run.
Well, also, you think about it, the Twin Towers, Akeem and Big Boss Man, really helped build to WrestleMania 5 where the Mega Powers explode. Without their involvement with Hogan and Savage, there wouldn't have been these two men, Akeem and Big Boss Man, were beating down Savage while like Hogan's backstage with Liz trying to get her help. All this shit is involved with these two wrestlers. So without them doing their job, and also look at a picture of Big Boss Man in 1989. Then look at a picture of him in 1990. Then 91. I don't know how he's doing it, but he lost a significant amount of weight from just 2 years from now. And being on the road that much, like I don't even know how someone can lose that mass because he's busy every day. But he must have been at the gym 24 hours a day to lose all that weight. Like he looked amazing. He used to slide underneath the bottom rope, come around and pop you in the face. Like who else is doing that at 200, 300 pounds plus?
Yeah. And I think that he saw that his agility and being healthy, at least as healthy as you could be with the life that they were living, was helping him. He was moving better. He, could do more and saw that. But that takes a tremendous commitment, as you just mentioned, that, these guys are on the road. We've said many times, like how many days of the year that they're out there. And you're going to these towns, and the more committed ones were, trying to get the most sleep they could, get up, get to a gym, you got to eat, then you got to get to an arena, and you got to perform. And I think that Bubba recognized at the time that this was his moment, this was his time, and he was going to, not let any of it slip away, and did what he had to do to take the most out of it. And I think he certainly accomplished that because as you just said, he had a great stretch in there where he was at the top of the card. He really was, and making a lot of money and at the top of his profession.
Yeah, he was one of the best. And
Absolutely.
now we're going to match number 12. It's Rick Rude versus Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Rick Rude wins. This is clearly to get Rick Rude more wins underneath his belt to set it up. Him versus Warrior at SummerSlam 1990, which would be the next pay-per-view. So there's really no talking points here. It's just more of like Rick Rude was the IC champion, hasn't really been doing that much. He wins here. Next up, though, is talking about your old podcast partner, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Now, we're in Canada.
Yep.
Okay? Now, Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes down the aisle with a giant American flag. He's taking on Dino Bravo, who is from Canada.
Yeah.
The crowd is very confused. They don't. You can see other faces like, do I boo Hacksaw? Do I cheer Dino? Was Hacksaw very aware of the situation of showing up? Because even when he tries to do a USA chant, they're like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that here. Like, we're not cheering USA.
Well, but at the time, this was he was doing the patriotic gimmick. What do? You keep that in the trunk?
He can't.
He's going to come out with just that the 2x4. So it is kind of interesting though. I mean, you can see America, Russia, or Iraq, or against, but Canada. U.S., Canada, or what we're going to boo each other? Maybe today, maybe today, but. No, not back then. So that's a hard sell.
Okay.
And
That one.
so I think it was what one of those things where we let's not get the countries involved here, folks. Let's just have these two guys not like each other today. So yeah, that was an interesting selling, like USA, USA.
I remember it was so funny because he stomps on the ground, and usually when he stomps on the ground, he does one of these, and everyone's like, He gets everyone clapping for USA. He's like,
they went,
shit.
oh, Canada.
Robert Goulet came out with a steel
and
chair.
I don't think Dino was going to sing. Yeah, that wasn't going to work either. So
no.
Yeah,
No, and Earthquake is out there as well. Hacksaw Jim Duggan wins the 2x4 shot to Dino Bravo. So we got baby faces cheating again, which is fine. We're okay with that in today's world. And Earthquake at the end, though, takes out Hacksaw and gives him the Earthquake splash with his, just smushes him in the ring. But I love the commentary because Jesse the Ventura is like, Gorilla, you're okay with this 2x4 shot? Like, you're okay with this? And Gorilla goes quiet for a minute and he goes, well, all the bad things Dino's done in the past, this is karma for him. And Jesse's like, come on.
Yeah. And I love that. When Jesse would do that, he would go, you're all good with all this stuff until you guys are cheating, because he was the heel announcer. And there were times you're like, he's got a point. He is right.
He did have a point.
Like Bobby wouldn't. If Bobby did that, he was still wrong. But Jesse would make you think, it wasn't a bad point. Yeah, I guess you're kind of right there. You're okay with him doing that, but he takes a 2x4 and cheats, and it's still okay. Yep. Like, come on, like say, no, I think he screwed up this time. No, you got to stay there. Nah, it's karma.
Yeah, it's karma.
So,
can't.
Yeah, but I really did. I like that. Jesse could walk that line of where, of course he was a heel, but he would make points at, bring it into where it was common sense really, and you couldn't really disagree with them. I guess, you do kind of have a point there, but all right, let's move on.
I disagree with you, but let's keep going. And we've reached the 14th match of the evening, and this pay-per-view is about 3 hours and 40 minutes long. It's the Ultimate Challenge. It's title for title. It's Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Now, title for title. Underneath this, I believe if Hulk Hogan pinned Ultimate Warrior, he would also be the Intercontinental Champion. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what you would think.
That it was title for title.
Even Howard Finkel says it's title for title. But yet, as years would go on, Bruce would say it was never for the Intercontinental title. And I'm thinking to myself, you say it's never for the Intercontinental title, but why do you keep saying title for title?
Well, also, why not? Why would you say it's only for?
Is it below Hogan to become Intercontinental Champion?
Yeah, no, and we knew how it was going to end, so why not?
What were you told when you were building this up on all the times of promoting this?
I was title for title. I always thought that's news to me that Bruce would say that it was always just for the heavyweight world championship, right? That's what he was saying.
But yet they always said,
and I like the angle of that. How awesome would that be? A double title holder for as long as it would happen before President Tunney would do something about it.
Of course, President,
because he was the word.
Well, yeah, he listen.
The man.
Don't screw with Tunney because he'll screw with you.
Yeah.
Though when Warrior first comes out, the audience is cheering, but when I watched this on the Vault last night on YouTube, you don't really hear a pop. You just hear noise. When Hulk Hogan comes out, holy shit! Like I can hear the crowd through Gorilla and through Jesse's microphone. Like there's no way that they thought, oh shit, this could go wrong because everyone's cheering Hogan. Some people are cheering Warrior. What were you thinking going into this? Did you think the audience would be split, or you thought, I think we're going to choose one or the other, and we're going to have a problem here?
No, I wasn't surprised by that because, Canada had a very rich history of professional wrestling across the country, and Hulk Hogan was, it was Hulkamania. And we're not that deep into the existence of the WWF at the time. And so you had a lot of devotees, shall we say, like these people were, they loved, decades and decades of professional wrestling, and they appreciated what Hulk Hogan had done for professional
Oh,
wrestling.
yeah.
So I don't think it was that surprising to me. And, Hulk had been there many times throughout his career. And so, the Warrior, he certainly, I mean, we can't say that people weren't cheering
They
for
were
him. He
cheering,
was
but
still
like the difference,
very
is a huge
popular.
difference.
But I think it wasn't just so much that, Hulk Hogan's in this match against Ultimate Warrior. It was that Hulk Hogan is here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That because he represented what professional wrestling had become at that point to that crowd. And it was more, I think they were showing that appreciation. Now that was my thinking. And I do remember that pop. I've said that there were a couple times in my career where I would be on the arena floor and the roar of a crowd wasn't just this audio pop going through my head. It went through your body. And that was one of those. And there were, a couple other times, but that was one of them. And so it's when you mentioned that, I was saying, yeah, I remember that's what it was like. And I really just felt like these people were just so glad that Hulk Hogan was here in Toronto, in their stadium, and he represented the reason they were there, that that had become this gigantic spectacle.
I love that how you said that because, I think some people confuse Hulk Hogan for his real life persona versus his wrestling persona and not realizing that there's a generation of fans who look at Hulk Hogan as their childhood hero. And so seeing this moment play out, as you said, 65,000 fans. I'm not going to disparage anyone, but I am highly doubting that I'm like, oh, Daddy, let's go see the Rockers versus the Orient Express. They're saying, Daddy, I want to go see Hulk Hogan.
Hogan, yeah. And
there's other people here,
right?
But I
and
want
whether
to
or
see
not
Hulk Hogan.
what they thought of the Warrior, whatever. But that was a big match. Okay, you're getting both of these guys in the ring. So that was kind of the the Flair Hogan we always wanted to see. That level. It was, we always talk about how you got to be able to stand toe to toe. This was one of those matches.
And people always say Warrior versus Savage at WrestleMania 7 is Warrior's greatest match. I disagree. I believe this is Warrior's greatest match, possibly even Hulk Hogan's, because the crowd is going, as Gorilla would say, bananas the entire time. There's no lull. There's no, I think I'm going to go to the bathroom really quick and I can come back. People are standing. And people always say, it's a standing room only. No. People are standing the whole time. Even in the crowd, Edge, Rated R Superstar Edge, is there as a child watching this event.
Yeah.
There's these little moments of people here enjoying this moment. And I think it's just one of those forgotten arts where you realize, look at the fun people are having. Stop looking for the negative. Stop looking for the problems. Enjoy the moment, because Warrior, and I have the brochure right here. The Warrior versus Hogan moment is one of those Rock versus Austin moments where you're never going to get this again. And this is something you should appreciate and love. And I think it's Warrior's best match. So for you, you told me, were you on the floor for this a match?
Yeah. When I didn't have to do interviews, I would just go outside the curtain. I always like to feel it. And because that was a whole different experience. And this was right up there. And I think, as you said, you thought this was one of the Warrior's greatest matches. I think Jim would agree with you that despite his, it was business, it was just me doing my job. I think that he felt this was definitely one of his greatest matches. And I told you about that interview where he says that that day everything worked. And I think for a professional athlete, somebody who's experienced that, or even whatever level you're at, but you have those days where, I guess you'd call it in the zone. You're just there and everything you do works. And I think this was one of those days where not only for Jim Hellwig, but also for Terry Bollea, that everything just worked the way the match worked out. So I think that Warrior would agree with you, and I'm sure that Hulk Hogan felt the same way. The big tell on this is how the crowd reacts to it, and being on that floor and seeing that where they were reacting to everything from the moment it started, from their entrances to when it was over. It all worked. And so, To me, it is. It's one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. And as always, when I tell you, it's not always, it's of course the wrestling is, but I take it all in.
Yeah.
And with the audience and where these two are, and that's what makes it. And that day it had it all.
And Warrior wins the match, becomes champion. He has both championships, the great image of him holding them both up. And there's Warrior on the cart, going away. But the thing is, people harp on these pieces to this match. One is Warrior before this has a promo weeks before this where he's going to steal Hulk Hogan's airplane and he's going to drive it into a mountain, killing the pilots, the sacrifices for the Warriors. Weird shit. But yet,
They always were weird.
He said he was going to steal his plane and then fly into a mountain, and the pilot has made the sacrifice for the Warrior to become champion. Like, I'm sorry. Yes, there are crazy promos, but I don't remember him ever saying he was going to steal someone's airplane and throw it into a mountain.
Yeah.
That's me.
No.
That's me. But yet in this, how do you think Hulk Hogan was feeling going into this? Because as Bret Hart would say in his book, that Hogan went up to Bret and was like, yeah, well, I lost, but they're going to call me back because they're going to need me, which, eventually they did. And we've talked about it multiple times where Hogan always has this plan in the back of his head where, like, well, if I leave them and business goes down, they'll always call me back because they'll think it's the reason the business went down because I left. And it's a great plan to stay on top forever. I get it. But how do you think Hogan was feeling about going into this event losing?
Well, I think it was all part of the grand plan that, you have these storylines that go on. They can't go on forever. Hulkamania couldn't just go on forever. At some point, you need some drama. You need to, as I always kind of call it the behind the music analogy. Remember that show Behind the Music?
Oh, I loved that show.
Right. And it was always, starting out, struggling, great fame. They screw up, crashing, and then redemption. Beginning, middle, end. You've got to have a story. It can't always be on the trajectory here. It can't always have this, ascension. And so I think that Hulk was looking at it that way. That how can I miss you if you don't go away? And so the best of both worlds, because I think deep down the Hulkster knew they're gonna need me. He could tell he'd been in this business long enough. He knew that the Warrior, Jim was not going to be able to handle this. He couldn't sustain it. There weren't the horses behind the Warriors. It just wasn't. Hulkamania had all of this. And so I think deep down he had that confidence that, this ain't over. And it's going to give me a nice break here. And they need to see what it's like not having me here. So I think that he was fine with it. And, did what he had to do, sold it, put him over, and knew that I'll be back.
Yeah, they'll call me. They'll call me again. They did, and he came back, and then he got taken out by earthquake, and then the double main event of SummerSlam 1990 occurred. Gorilla Monsoon, though, on commentary suggests that Hulk Hogan is no longer just a wrestler; he's immortal. That's where the immortal Hulk Hogan line comes into play, because Warrior wins the championship, according to, again, the rumors and the lore that Hogan was not supposed to do this. He grabs the world championship. He's the one who hands it to Warrior, gets on the little golf cart ring, goes. He's looking sad, like he's crying, and it's over, and it's never going to be better. But the camera stays on Hogan instead of focusing on Warrior more. And that's when Gorilla drops that line about immortality and Hulk Hogan. And so Hogan suggests that he planted the seed of, well, now you're focusing on me. Like, what's next for Hogan? Where's Hogan going? Why is he so sad? Versus, man, look at Warrior. He's our champion. He's so strong. We can't wait to see what he does next. There's a lot of, you can pick and choose what you want from that sentence. But like, do you think Hogan's so smart he realizes, like, if I look sad, people will be concerned about me, not about him?
Yeah. Well, he'd made a career out of reading audiences and the whole psychology behind it. And as they say, Hogan must pose.
And he posed.
And in his own way, that's brilliant.
It was good. And WrestleMania 6 is one of my favorite events because, again, it almost goes 4 hours long, and usually these events didn't do that.
Like this podcast?
Nope, 2 hours almost. We've talked about it all, folks. We talked about it all, from Steve Allen and poopy jokes to Ware becoming champion to Sweet Sapphire wrestling in a ring where she shouldn't have probably have been. But in reality, Mooney, you said it's one of your favorites. And before we wrap this up,
this may be one of my favorite podcasts. So, folks, don't you miss it. You got. Well, wait a minute. You've been listening.
The end. This is the end. I was gonna say, Mary Tyler
really,
Moore. Guys, you gotta watch. You guys gotta watch this. I really enjoy this wrestling. That's what it's called. It's called wrestling. Mary, are you okay? I'm doing great. I got Botox recently. Can you tell?
That's right. The eyebrows are up, touching the hairline there.
But final thoughts on this pay-per-view before we wrap this up after a 4-hour podcast.
Well, absolutely one of my faves. And as we've mentioned over the last whatever it's been, that it was for a number of reasons. And Steve, to me, I always take it. I look at it as this grand picture and all the stuff that was involved in this. And better or worse, I mean, it was a lot of entertainment to take in. So this remains right up there on the top of my list. And so I'm glad we had a chance to really go through the whole thing. I know we've done it in parts before, but to really talk about the whole event was awesome.
Yep. Well, now after we end this, I'm going to go ask Alexa to play me Hunka 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 Love, 3 hunkas.
With Valentine? Skip that one. Just use the one with Hunky.
You know what? I'm just going to sing it myself because I don't want to hear Valentine try to sing. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in to us. How about WrestleMania 6 here on the Golden Arrow Podcast with Sean Mooney? I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
It's the golden age